What happens when Chicago's coldest billionaire meets the one woman who refuses to break? Nathaniel Stephen built an empire on ice, ruthless, brilliant, and harboring a hatred rooted in childhood trauma. When his personal assistant walks out, HR assigns Angela Miller, a black woman whose confidence threatens everything he's convinced himself to believe. He wants her gone. She wants respect. But when a scandal forces them into a fake relationship, the lines between hatred and desire begin to blur. Can love really heal decades of pain? Can one woman's strength crack through walls built by betrayal? In this explosive enemies-to-lovers journey, watch as prejudice collides with passion, and two hearts discover that sometimes the person you hate most becomes the only one who can save you. Get ready for a story of redemption, fire, and undeniable chemistry. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, because this story will leave you breathless. The coffee mug shattered against the marble wall, brown liquid streaming down the pristine white surface like tears the man who threw it would never shed. Get out. Nathaniel Stephen's voice cut through the executive office like a blade, cold and precise. His personal assistant of 3 years stood frozen by the door, resignation letter trembling in her hands, mascara already smudged from crying. She'd finally reached her breaking point, and everyone in the building had been waiting for this moment. Mr. Stephen, I just need to explain. I said get out. He didn't even look at her, his attention fixed on the Chicago skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. At 35, Nathaniel Stephen commanded one of the most powerful tech empires in the Midwest, a self-made billionaire whose name inspired both awe and fear. His tailored charcoal suit fit his lean, athletic frame perfectly, every detail of his appearance as controlled as his emotions. Sharp jawline, piercing gray eyes, dark hair styled with mathematical precision. He was devastatingly handsome in the way that ice sculptures are beautiful, cold, untouchable, and capable of cutting you if you got too close. The assistant fled, her sobs echoing down the hallway. Nathaniel finally turned, surveying the coffee-stained wall with detached annoyance. His fifth assistant in 2 years. HR would have something to say about that, no doubt. They always did, with their concerns about workplace culture and leadership style, and other corporate phrases that meant absolutely nothing when quarterly earnings were up 23%. His phone buzzed. Margaret Chin from Human Resources. Right on schedule. Margaret. Nathaniel. We need to talk about Jessica's resignation. She quit. People quit. Find me someone competent this time. He moved to his desk, already reviewing the Anderson merger documents that needed his attention before the 3 o'clock board meeting. That's the fifth assistant in 24 months, Nathaniel. The board has expressed concerns about your management style, and frankly, we're running out of qualified candidates willing to work under these conditions. He smiled, though there was no warmth in it, then raised the salary offer. Everyone has a price. It's not about money. Margaret's voice carried an edge he rarely heard from her. It's about basic human dignity and respect. Your assistants consistently report verbal abuse, impossible demands, and a hostile work environment. The board has mandated that we implement our diversity and inclusion initiative, starting with your position. We've already selected your new assistant. She starts tomorrow. Absolutely not. I choose my own staff. Not this time. The board vote was unanimous, Nathaniel. 6 months ago, you signed off on the company's commitment to workplace equity and diverse hiring practices. We're holding you to that commitment. Angela Miller will be your new personal assistant, and unless you want to explain to shareholders why you're violating company policy, I suggest you prepare to work with her professionally. Nathaniel's grip tightened on his phone. Send me her file. It's already in your email. I'll see you at the board meeting. Margaret hung up before he could respond, a power move he would have respected if he weren't so furious. He opened his laptop with more force than necessary, pulling up the personnel file. Angela Miller's photograph filled his screen, and something dark and familiar twisted in his chest. A black woman, 28 years old, MBA from Northwestern, previous experience at 2 Fortune 500 companies with glowing recommendations. Her resume was impeccable, her qualifications undeniable, and none of it mattered because all Nathaniel could see was the past he'd spent decades trying to forget. His mother's face, younger than Angela but with that same confident smile, packing suitcases while 7-year-old Nathaniel watched from the doorway. The man waiting in the car outside, the one she'd chosen over her own family. The way his father had crumbled, how their entire world had shattered because she'd decided they weren't enough. She'd been black, beautiful, and the source of every ounce of pain Nathaniel carried in his carefully constructed fortress of a heart. He closed the laptop with a sharp click. This wasn't going to work. He'd find a way around it, board mandate or not. He always did. The next morning arrived with the crisp efficiency of a Chicago autumn, all gray skies and sharp wind that cut through the city's steel canyons. Nathaniel arrived at Stephen Technologies at 6:30, as he did every morning, expecting the quiet solitude of an empty executive floor before the chaos of the day began. Instead, he found Angela Miller already seated at the assistant's desk outside his office, perfectly poised and entirely too comfortable in his space. She stood when she saw him, and Nathaniel was struck by how she carried herself, shoulders back, chin up, meeting his gaze directly without the nervousness or fear he'd grown accustomed to seeing in new employees. She wore a navy blue dress that was professional without being boring, her natural hair styled in elegant twists that framed her face. She was beautiful, he registered with clinical detachment, and absolutely unacceptable. "Mr. Stephen, good morning. I'm Angela Miller, your new assistant. I've already reviewed your calendar for the week, prepared briefing documents for today's meetings, and taken the liberty of rescheduling your lunch with Senator Morrison since it conflicted with the Anderson merger closing. I hope that's acceptable." Her voice was warm but professional, confident without being presumptuous. She extended her hand for a handshake, and Nathaniel stared at it like she'd offered him a snake. "Miss Miller, there seems to be a misunderstanding. I didn't approve your hiring, and I don't need an assistant at the moment. I'm sure HR can find you another position in the company." Something flickered in her dark brown eyes. Not hurt, not anger, but something sharper. Recognition, perhaps, of exactly what game he was trying to play. "I see. Unfortunately, Mr. Stephen, my assignment comes directly from the board of directors as part of the company's commitment to workplace diversity. Unless you'd like to take this up with them directly, I'm here to stay." She smiled, and it was professional warmth with steel underneath. "I'm very good at my job, and I promise I won't make you regret this arrangement." "I already regret it." "Then I suppose I'll have to change your mind." She gestured to a stack of folders on her desk. "These are the briefing materials for your board meeting. I noticed several discrepancies in the financial projections that should probably be addressed before you present them. I've highlighted the relevant sections." Nathaniel snatched the top folder, flipping it open with barely controlled irritation. He scanned the first page, then the second, his jaw tightening as he realized she was right. The numbers were off, subtly enough that most people would have missed it, but she'd caught the error that would have made him look incompetent in front of the entire board. "How did you find this?" "I read the materials. Thoroughly. It's my job." She tilted her head slightly, studying him with a directness that made him uncomfortable. "Is there anything else you need before your first meeting, Mr. Stephen?" He wanted to fire her on the spot, wanted to call Margaret and demand this ridiculous arrangement be reversed, wanted anything except to acknowledge that this woman had already proven herself more competent than his last 3 assistants combined. "Coffee," he said coldly. "Black, no sugar, from the cafe on 5th Street. Not the break room." "Of course. Anything else?" "That will be all, Miss Miller." She nodded, gathering her purse and coat with graceful efficiency. As she passed him, he caught a hint of her perfume, something subtle and expensive that irritated him because it was exactly what he would have chosen for someone in her position. She'd done her homework, understood the role, and was playing it perfectly. He hated that almost as much as he hated how his carefully constructed prejudices felt shakier than they had in years. The board meeting was a masterclass in corporate warfare, and Nathaniel navigated it with his usual cold precision. He presented the corrected financial projections, fielded questions with sharp efficiency, and watched board members squirm under his analytical gaze. This was his domain, where emotions didn't matter and only results counted. But he couldn't stop thinking about Angela Miller sitting outside his office, a presence he hadn't authorized and didn't want, disrupting the careful order of his world simply by existing. When he returned, she had his lunch waiting, not what he'd ordered, but a healthier alternative from his favorite restaurant, the one he only went to on Fridays. The note attached said simply, "Your cholesterol levels from your last physical suggest we should rethink your lunch choices." A.M. She'd accessed his medical records. The audacity made his blood pressure spike. "Miss Miller, step into my office." Now. She appeared in his doorway with her tablet, looking utterly unruffled. "Yes, Mr. Stephen. You accessed my private medical information without authorization. Actually, I accessed information your previous assistant kept in your personnel file for emergency purposes. It's standard protocol for executive assistants to be aware of any health considerations that might affect scheduling or emergency response. Your father's heart attack 3 years ago was also noted, which is why I thought preventive measures might be appreciated." She met his glare with calm professionalism. "Was I wrong to be concerned about your well-being?" It was the perfect response, completely reasonable and utterly infuriating because she'd taken his attempt to catch her in wrongdoing and turned it into evidence of her competence and care. "In the future, ask before making decisions about my personal life. Of course, though technically, your lunch choices during work hours constitute professional rather than personal decisions, but I'll defer to your preferences. Should I order your usual burger and fries tomorrow?" The slight emphasis on usual made it clear she knew exactly how unhealthy his habits were and was daring him to acknowledge it. Nathaniel found himself in the unfamiliar position of having been outmaneuvered by someone he employed. "That will be all, Miss Miller." She nodded and left, closing his door with a soft click that somehow felt like a small victory on her part. Over the following days, Nathaniel escalated his campaign to break her. He assigned her impossible tasks with unrealistic deadlines, a 100-page report analysis needed in 2 hours, travel arrangements for a trip to Tokyo requiring 20 different meetings across 3 days to be coordinated in 12 time zones, a complete reorganization of 5 years of archived files by the end of the week. Angela completed every single task, not just adequately but perfectly. The report analysis was comprehensive and insightful. The Tokyo itinerary was so efficient his previous assistant would have needed a week to accomplish it. The files were reorganized with a new digital system that made everything more accessible than it had been in years. She never complained, never showed frustration, never gave him the satisfaction of seeing her break. Instead, she met each challenge with quiet competence and that same professional smile that made him want to throw something. The breaking point came during a meeting with the Anderson team, where Nathaniel was negotiating the final terms of a merger worth $300 million. He was in the middle of explaining their market analysis when Angela's voice cut through the conference room. "Excuse me, Mr. Stephen, but I believe those numbers are from last quarter's report, not the current market conditions." Every head in the room turned toward her, standing by the presentation screen with her tablet. Nathaniel felt rage flash through him, hot and immediate. No one interrupted him in meetings, certainly not his assistant, and especially not to correct him in front of clients. "Miss Miller, I don't recall asking for your input." "No, sir, but the Anderson team deserves accurate information for their decision-making. The market share you just cited is 3 percentage points higher than our current position based on this week's data." She pulled up a graph on the screen, and Nathaniel recognized his error immediately. She was right. He'd been working from outdated information because he'd been too focused on trying to make her fail to notice his own mistake. James Anderson, the CEO sitting across from him, leaned forward with interest. "That's a significant difference, Nathaniel. I appreciate your assistant's attention to detail. Perhaps we should review the current numbers before proceeding?" Nathaniel's jaw clenched so hard he thought his teeth might crack, but he nodded with forced professionalism. "Of course. Miss Miller, please share the updated analysis." She did, competently and thoroughly, and the meeting proceeded with the corrected information. By the end, the Anderson team seemed more confident in the merger than they had at the start, and James shook Nathaniel's hand with genuine warmth. "You've got a sharp team, Nathaniel. That assistant of yours is a real asset." "Yes," Nathaniel said through gritted teeth. "She certainly is." The moment the conference room emptied, he rounded on Angela with barely controlled fury. "Never, ever interrupt me in a meeting again. Do you understand?" She met his anger without flinching. "I understand you're upset, Mr. Stephen, but I had a choice between protecting your ego and protecting your business interests. I chose the business. That's my job. Your job is to do what I tell you, not embarrass me in front of clients. I prevented you from embarrassing yourself with incorrect information. There's a difference." Her voice remained calm, but something fierce sparked in her eyes. "I respect you, Mr. Stephen, but respect goes both ways. If you want an assistant who will let you make mistakes to preserve your pride, I'm not the right fit. But if you want someone who will help you succeed, even when it's uncomfortable, then we need to establish different working parameters. Different parameters, he repeated, his voice dangerously soft. Such as acknowledging that I'm here to help you, not hurt you. That my job is to make you look good, which sometimes means preventing you from looking bad. That competence isn't a threat, it's an asset. She paused, and for the first time since she'd started, he saw something vulnerable flash across her face. And such as recognizing that whatever prejudice you're carrying, it has nothing to do with me. I didn't ask for this assignment, but I'm here now, and I'm good at what I do. You can work with me or against me, but either way, I'm not going anywhere. The word prejudice hung in the air between them, undeniable and accusatory. She'd named the thing he'd been trying to hide, even from himself, and the exposure made him feel raw and furious, and something else he couldn't quite identify. Be very careful, Miss Miller. You have no idea what you're talking about. Don't I? She held his gaze, unflinching. I've worked for difficult bosses before, Mr. Stephen. I've dealt with unrealistic expectations and impossible standards and men who wanted me to fail. But you're different. You don't just want me to fail, you need me to. And I think we both know why. Get out of my office. Gladly. Your next meeting is in 20 minutes. I'll have the materials ready. She turned toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I'm sorry for whatever happened to make you this way. But it wasn't my fault, and I won't accept punishment for it. She left, and Nathaniel stood in his empty office, chest tight with an emotion he refused to name. Fury, he told himself. Just fury at her insubordination, her presumption, her complete inability to know her place. But deep down, in a place he rarely acknowledged, he knew Angela Miller had seen through him with terrifying accuracy. And that scared him more than anything had in years. The war between them intensified over the following weeks. Nathaniel assigned increasingly difficult tasks, searching for the limit of her competence. Angela met every challenge, often exceeding his expectations so thoroughly that it only made his resentment grow. The office staff began to notice, whispers spreading through the executive floor about the new assistant who refused to be broken by Nathaniel Stephen's notorious temperament. I heard she corrected him in the Anderson meeting. Someone murmured in the break room, unaware Nathaniel was passing by. She's the first assistant to last more than a month without crying, another replied. I give her 2 more weeks before she quits. I give her less. Nobody stands up to Nathaniel Stephen and survives. Nathaniel continued walking, their words following him like ghosts. He should have been pleased that Angela was making his reputation even more formidable, but instead he felt something uncomfortably close to shame. When had he become the villain in his own company's story? The answer, of course, was the day his mother left and taught him that trust was a luxury only fools indulged in. The confrontation he'd been waiting for came on a Friday evening, after most of the staff had left for the weekend. Nathaniel was reviewing quarterly projections when his office door opened without a knock. Angela walked in with determined strides, still professional, but with something fierce burning in her expression. We need to talk, Mr. Stephen. I'm busy. Yes, you're always busy. Busy making my job difficult. Busy testing me. Busy hoping I'll quit so you can validate whatever narrative you've constructed in your head. She closed the door behind her, and the soft click felt ominous. I've been patient. I've been professional. I've exceeded every expectation you've set, completed every impossible task, proven myself over and over. And you still look at me like I'm your enemy. So I'm asking directly, what do I have to do to earn your respect? Nathaniel leaned back in his chair, studying her with cold assessment. Nothing. Because you can't. Why not? You want honesty, Miss Miller? Fine. You remind me of someone I'd rather forget. Someone who taught me that trust is a fairy tale and loyalty is a lie. You can be the most competent assistant in Chicago, and it won't matter, because every time I look at you, I see her. And I despise her. Something in Angela's expression shifted, understanding dawning with painful clarity. Your mother. He flinched, the reaction so small she might have missed it if she weren't watching him so carefully. That's none of your concern. It is when it affects my ability to do my job. She moved closer to his desk, her voice gentler now. I'm sorry she hurt you, Mr. Stephen. Genuinely, deeply sorry. But I'm not her. I'm Angela Miller, A woman who's worked hard for everything she has, who takes pride in doing her job well, and who doesn't deserve to be treated like a ghost from your past. Then quit. Find another position where you won't be constantly reminded that you're not wanted. No. The word was firm, absolute. Because that would be letting you win, and I don't lose. More importantly, it would be accepting that your prejudice is justified, and it's not. You don't get to decide I'm unworthy because someone who looked like me failed you. That's not how the world works, no matter how much money or power you have. Nathaniel stood abruptly, the movement making his chair roll backward. You have no idea what you're talking about. You don't know anything about my life, my past, my reasons. Then tell me. Angela's voice was challenging. Explain it. Make me understand why a brilliant, successful man like you chooses to carry around hatred like a security blanket. Help me see why you'd rather be miserable and alone than risk trusting someone again. I'm not alone. I have everything I need. You have nothing that matters. The words hit like a slap. You have money and power and a reputation that makes people afraid to talk to you honestly. You have assistants who quit rather than endure your abuse. Colleagues who respect your intelligence but not your character. And a heart so frozen that you can't see when someone is genuinely trying to help you. She shook her head, sadness mixing with frustration. You're so busy protecting yourself from being hurt again that you've forgotten how to live. Get out. Why? Because I'm telling you the truth. Because for once someone isn't intimidated by your anger, or your money, or your cold indifference. Angela's eyes blazed with conviction. I'm not leaving, Mr. Stephen. I'm not quitting. I'm going to keep doing my job excellently. Keep being professional. Keep proving that your prejudices are wrong. And eventually, whether you like it or not, you're going to have to face the fact that I'm not your enemy. I'm just a woman trying to work. They stood there in tense silence, the Chicago skyline glittering behind them, the office empty except for the weight of everything unsaid. Nathaniel wanted to fire her, wanted to call security, wanted anything except to acknowledge the uncomfortable truth in her words. Margaret won't let me fire you, he said finally, his voice flat. No, she won't. The board gave very specific instructions. So I guess you're stuck with me. Angela's expression softened slightly. For what it's worth, I don't enjoy this battle. I'd much rather work with you than against you. The choice is yours, Mr. Stephen. She left before he could respond, her departure feeling less like a retreat and more like a strategic withdrawal. Nathaniel sank back into his chair, staring at the quarterly projections without really seeing them. Angela Miller was dangerous, he realized. Not because she was incompetent or malicious, but because she was exactly what he'd claimed didn't exist, someone trustworthy, loyal, and unwilling to let his darkness win. She was a threat to every wall he'd built, every defense mechanism he relied on, every comfortable prejudice that protected him from feeling. And the most terrifying part was that some small, long-buried piece of himself wanted to let her in. He squashed that thought immediately, returning to his work with fierce determination. Feeling was weakness. Trust was foolishness. He'd learned that lesson at 7 years old, and no brilliant, beautiful, impossibly stubborn assistant was going to make him forget it. But as the evening stretched on and the city lights flickered to life below, Nathaniel couldn't quite shake the memory of Angela's words. You're so busy protecting yourself from being hurt again that you've forgotten how to live. Perhaps he had. But forgetting meant safety. Remembering meant pain. He'd chosen his path long ago, and he wasn't about to change it now. Even if a small, traitorous part of him wondered what it might be like if he did. The scandal broke on a Tuesday morning, complete with headline photos and enough speculation to send the company's PR team into full panic mode. Nathaniel was in a board meeting when his phone started buzzing with increasing urgency. He ignored the first 3 calls, but when Margaret Chin's name appeared for the 4th time, he excused himself and stepped into the hallway. What? We have a situation. Check your email. Now. He pulled up his inbox and felt his blood turn cold. The subject line read, Stephen Technologies CEO in Secret Romance. The attached image showed him and Angela at the airport in New York, taken during their business trip the previous week. The photograph was misleading. They'd been waiting for a delayed flight, and Angela had fallen asleep against his shoulder during the 4-hour delay. He'd been too focused on work to notice until she'd woken up embarrassed and apologetic. Completely innocent, but the camera angle made it look intimate, tender, like lovers caught in a private moment. The article was worse, full of speculation about power dynamics, scandalous workplace relationships, and breathless commentary about Chicago's most notorious bachelor finally showing his human side. It painted Angela as either a calculating seductress or a victim of workplace harassment, depending on which paragraph you read. The whole thing was sensationalist garbage designed to sell papers and generate clicks. It was also going to destroy both their professional reputations if they didn't handle it carefully. "I need you back at the office immediately," Margaret said. "The PR team is waiting, and we need to craft a response before this spirals further." Nathaniel returned to the meeting, made his excuses, and left with barely contained fury. This was exactly the kind of attention he loathed. Personal, invasive, reducing his carefully constructed professional image to tabloid fodder. Angela was already in the conference room when he arrived, looking composed despite the chaos. Their PR director, Marcus Wellington, had spreadsheets and media analysis pulled up on multiple screens, his expression grave. "All right, let's assess the damage," Marcus began. "The story broke 2 hours ago and has already been picked up by 6 major outlets. Social media is active. The hashtag Stephen Romance is trending, which is both impressive and problematic. We're seeing mixed reactions. Some people love the humanizing angle, others are questioning workplace ethics, and a few are raising concerns about racial dynamics given your respective backgrounds." Nathaniel's jaw clenched. "There is no romance. It was a business trip, nothing more. I believe you, but that doesn't matter. The narrative is out there, and it's gaining traction." Marcus clicked to another slide showing social media posts. "The problem is that denying it too strongly makes you look cold and makes Angela look like you're throwing her under the bus. We need a strategy that protects both of you while managing the company's image." "What do you suggest?" Angela asked, her voice steady despite the obvious tension in her shoulders. Marcus hesitated, exchanging a glance with Margaret. "This is going to sound extreme, but hear me out. Your public image, Nathaniel, has always been harsh, cold, brilliant, but unapproachable. The shareholders have expressed concerns about it affecting business relationships and company culture. This scandal, ironically, is the first time the public has seen you as potentially human. The media response has been overwhelmingly positive where that's concerned." "Get to the point," Nathaniel growled. "The point is that we don't deny the relationship. We confirm it. We lean into the narrative, control it, shape it into something that benefits rather than damages the company." Marcus pulled up polling data. "Our preliminary analysis shows that a confirmed relationship would actually boost your favorability ratings by 15%. It softens your image, makes you relatable, shows personal growth. Combined with Angela's excellent reputation, it could be exactly what Stephen Technologies needs to counteract recent criticisms about workplace culture." "Absolutely not." "Nathaniel." I said no. "I won't lie to the public, and I won't drag Miss Miller into a fake relationship for PR purposes. Find another solution." Angela spoke up, surprising everyone. "What would this arrangement entail?" Specifically, Marcus looked hopeful. "Public appearances together at select events. Social media presence showing a developing relationship. Nothing too intimate. We're talking professional events where you'd naturally be together anyway, just framed differently. Charity galas, company functions, maybe a few carefully staged casual outings. We'd provide support, guidance, and most importantly, an exit strategy with a mutually agreed timeline." "And my role in the company?" Angela asked. "I won't compromise my professional integrity for this. Your professional role wouldn't change. If anything, it strengthens both your positions. The narrative becomes brilliant executive and equally brilliant assistant discover genuine connection, which counters any claims of impropriety." Margaret leaned forward. "Angela, I want to be clear that this is entirely optional. You're under no obligation to participate, and your employment is secure regardless of your decision. However, if you do agree, we'd structure a significant bonus into your contract as compensation for the additional demands on your time and privacy." Nathaniel watched Angela process the information, seeing the analytical mind behind her eyes calculating risks and benefits. He wanted to shut this down immediately, to refuse on her behalf and damn the consequences. But something stopped him, maybe the way she was handling this with the same calm competence she brought to every challenge, or maybe the uncomfortable realization that Marcus was right about his image problem. "I need to speak with Miss Miller privately," he said abruptly. The room cleared, leaving them alone in the glass-walled conference room overlooking the Chicago skyline. Angela turned to face him, her expression unreadable. "Don't do this," Nathaniel said quietly. "Don't sacrifice yourself for my mistakes. This isn't just about you, Mr. Stephen. My face is in those photographs too. My reputation is being dissected on social media. I have as much stake in controlling this narrative as you do." She crossed her arms, the defensive gesture at odds with her confident tone. "Besides, Marcus is right. Your image needs rehabilitation, and frankly, so does this company's culture. If we can accomplish that while managing this scandal, maybe it's worth considering. You'd be agreeing to lie, to pretend feelings that don't exist, to let the world believe something that isn't true. Would it be entirely untrue?" The question hung between them, loaded with implications neither wanted to examine. Angela's cheeks colored slightly, but she didn't break eye contact. "We spend 12 hours a day together. You're brilliant and frustrating and challenging in ways that make me better at my job. You're also carrying pain that's turned into anger, and I think—" She paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. "I think maybe this arrangement could help both of us. You get the public relations benefit, I get the bonus and contract protection, and maybe along the way, you learn that trusting someone isn't the worst thing that could happen." "Trust," he repeated bitterly. "That's what this is really about for you, isn't it? You think you can fix me, heal whatever you perceive as broken, prove that your stubborn optimism can overcome my very justified cynicism. I don't think you're broken. I think you're afraid." Angela moved closer, her voice softer now. "And I'm offering you a chance to face that fear in a controlled environment where we both benefit. Maybe we pretend at first. Maybe it stays pretend. Or maybe—" She didn't finish the sentence, leaving the possibility hanging unspoken. Nathaniel stared at her, at this infuriating woman who refused to be intimidated, who saw through his defenses, who was now proposing they step into an elaborate fiction that felt dangerously close to something he might actually want if he were honest with himself. Which he wasn't. Wouldn't be. Couldn't afford to be. "If we do this," he said slowly, "there are rules. Strict boundaries. This is a professional arrangement with a clear beginning and end. No blurred lines. No confusion about what's real and what's performance. We present a united front publicly, but privately, nothing changes between us. Do you understand?" "Perfectly." Angela extended her hand for a handshake, the gesture formal despite the intimate nature of their discussion. 6 months. We give Marcus and the PR team 6 months to rehabilitate both our images. Then we have a quiet, mutual breakup that leaves everyone's reputation intact. Agreed. He took her hand, feeling the warmth of her palm against his, and wondered if he was making the biggest mistake of his life or taking the first step towards something he didn't yet have words for. Agreed. They shook on it, sealing a bargain that would either save them both or destroy them completely. Nathaniel suspected it might be both. If you're loving this story so far, make sure to hit that like button and drop a comment letting me know what you think about Angela and Nathaniel's arrangement. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. The transformation began with a press release carefully crafted by Marcus and his team, announcing that Nathaniel Stephen and Angela Miller had been quietly dating for several weeks. The statement emphasized their professional respect, shared values, and mutual decision to keep their relationship private until the leaked photographs forced their hand. It was diplomatic, romantic enough to satisfy public curiosity, and vague enough to avoid specific details that could be contradicted later. The public response was overwhelming. Within hours, #StephenRomance evolved from scandalous speculation to celebration. People loved the narrative of Chicago's coldest billionaire finding warmth with a brilliant woman who matched his intellect. Think pieces appeared analyzing their relationship as a modern fairy tale, complete with enemies to lovers undertones that weren't entirely inaccurate. Their first official public appearance was a charity gala benefiting literacy programs in underserved communities. Marcus had chosen it deliberately, high-profile enough to make a statement, philanthropic enough to counter Nathaniel's harsh reputation, and focused on a cause Angela genuinely cared about, which would make her enthusiasm authentic. Nathaniel arrived at Angela's apartment to pick her up, a detail Marcus insisted would photograph well. When she opened the door, he forgot whatever practiced greeting he'd prepared. She wore a deep emerald gown that hugged her curves elegantly, Her hair swept up to showcase her graceful neck and shoulders. She was stunning, and the realization hit him with uncomfortable force. "You look appropriate for the event," he managed, the compliment strangled by his refusal to acknowledge what he actually felt. Angela's lips quirked in amusement. "You look very handsome yourself, Mr. Stephen. Should we establish what level of affection we're performing tonight? Minimal. Professional intimacy. Hand-holding, perhaps a hand on the back. Nothing excessive. Of course. Wouldn't want anyone to think you're actually capable of warmth." She grabbed her clutch and wrap, then paused. "Nathaniel. May I call you Nathaniel in public? Mr. Stephen seems rather formal for a girlfriend." The word girlfriend in her voice did something strange to his chest. "Fine. But only in public." "Only in public," she echoed, something unreadable in her eyes. The gala was held at the Four Seasons, a glittering affair where Chicago's elite gathered to see and be seen while congratulating themselves on their charitable contributions. Nathaniel had attended dozens of these events, always alone, always leaving early, always maintaining the cold distance that had become his trademark. Tonight was different. Tonight, he walked in with Angela on his arm, and the room's attention shifted immediately to them. Cameras flashed. People whispered. Society reporters practically fell over themselves trying to get close enough to observe Chicago's most surprising couple. "Smile," Angela murmured, her own expression warm and natural. "You look like you're heading to an execution. I hate these things. I know. But for tonight, pretend you're enjoying yourself. Pretend you're a man who's falling for a wonderful woman and wants to show her off." Her fingers tightened slightly on his arm. "It's just acting, Nathaniel. Surely you can manage that for a few hours." He could, he discovered. With Angela beside him, navigating conversations with grace, laughing genuinely at people's jokes, bringing warmth to every interaction, he found himself relaxing incrementally. She had a gift for putting people at ease, for making genuine connections that had nothing to do with status or wealth. When she talked about the literacy programs they were supporting, her passion was infectious, and Nathaniel found himself actually listening instead of counting down minutes until he could leave. "She's wonderful," Margaret Chin said, cornering him while Angela was speaking with the program director. "I've never seen you like this." "Like what?" "Almost human." Margaret smiled. "I know this started as damage control, Nathaniel, but that woman is good for you. Don't let your pride ruin it." Before he could respond, Angela returned, her eyes bright with excitement. "Nathaniel, they've asked if we consider doing a company matching program for employee donations. I think it would be a brilliant PR move and genuinely helpful. What do you think?" The old Nathaniel would have dismissed it as unnecessary expenditure. Instead, he found himself nodding. "Draft a proposal. We'll review it Monday." Her smile could have lit the entire ballroom. "Thank you." As the evening progressed, the charade began to feel less like acting and more like something else. When Nathaniel placed his hand on the small of Angela's back to guide her through the crowd, it felt natural. When she laughed at something he said, leaning closer to hear him over the music, he didn't want to move away. When they danced, Marcus had insisted they must. Her body fit against his with unsettling perfection. "This isn't so terrible, is it?" Angela asked as they swayed to the orchestra's rendition of a classic standard. "It's tolerable." High praise from Nathaniel Stephen. She looked up at him, and in the soft lighting of the ballroom, her eyes were luminous. "Can I ask you something personal?" "You can ask. I may not answer." "When did she leave?" "Your mother." The question should have made him angry, but somehow, with Angela in his arms and the whole world watching them pretend, the truth felt safer to share. "I was 7. She packed her bags while my father was at work. Told me she'd found someone who made her happy, someone who understood her in ways we never could. The man waiting in the car was younger, exciting, everything my father wasn't. She kissed my forehead, said she'd call soon, and I never saw her again." Angela's expression softened with genuine sympathy. "I'm so sorry." "Don't be. It taught me a valuable lesson about trust and loyalty. People leave. They always leave. Better to expect it than be surprised." "Not everyone leaves, Nathaniel. Some people stay even when it's difficult, even when they're not appreciated, even when staying means fighting against someone's determination to push them away." Her hand squeezed his shoulder gently. "Some people are worth trusting. And how do you know which ones?" "You don't. Not with certainty. That's what makes trust brave." She smiled sadly. But living without it isn't really living. It's just existing in a fortress you built to keep pain out, but you locked yourself inside with it. Before Nathaniel could respond, a photographer approached, asking for a posed picture. They obliged, and Marcus would later tell them it was the most natural shot of the evening. Nathaniel looking at Angela with something raw and unguarded in his expression, while she smiled up at him with warmth and hope. The photograph would run in 6 major publications. People would call it romantic, touching, proof of genuine connection. Neither of them would admit it was the moment the lines between pretending and reality began to blur beyond recognition. The following weeks blurred into a carefully choreographed performance that became increasingly difficult to distinguish from truth. There were coffee shop outings where photographers accidentally captured them laughing together. Quiet dinners at upscale restaurants where Nathaniel found himself genuinely enjoying Angela's company. Weekend appearances at art galleries and cultural events that Marcus insisted would humanize Nathaniel's image, but where he discovered Angela had impeccable taste and sharp insights about contemporary art. At work, their professional relationship remained largely unchanged, though the office atmosphere had shifted. People smiled at them knowingly. Colleagues made warm comments about how happy they seemed. The board expressed satisfaction with Nathaniel's improved public image and Angela's positive influence on company culture. But it was the private moments, the unscheduled, unphotographed, unplanned instances that threatened Nathaniel's carefully maintained walls. Like the evening Angela stayed late helping him prepare for a crucial investor presentation. She'd ordered Thai food from his favorite restaurant without asking, somehow knowing exactly what he'd want. They'd worked side by side until midnight, and when she'd fallen asleep on his office couch, he'd covered her with his jacket and found himself watching her sleep with something tender and terrifying growing in his chest. Or the morning she'd appeared at his penthouse with hangover remedies after a particularly brutal business dinner involving too much whiskey and bad decisions. She hadn't judged, hadn't lectured, just quietly made sure he survived the day with minimal suffering and maximal discretion. Or the afternoon she'd caught him staring at an old photograph of his mother he kept hidden in his desk drawer. She'd said nothing, just placed her hand over his and sat with him in understanding silence until the pain receded enough for him to breathe normally again. These moments weren't part of their arrangement. They weren't performance or strategy. They were something real, something growing despite Nathaniel's determination to keep his heart locked away. The turning point came at the annual Technology Innovation Gala, 3 months into their fake relationship. It was a massive event attended by industry leaders, investors, and media from across the country. Nathaniel was receiving an award for his company's groundbreaking AI developments, and Angela accompanied him as his date. She looked breathtaking in a black dress that was simultaneously elegant and daring, and Nathaniel couldn't stop looking at her. Throughout the evening, he was hyper-aware of her presence, the sound of her laugh, the way she touched his arm when making a point, how she commanded respect in conversations with people twice her age and experience level. They were standing near the bar when Marcus Drake, CEO of their biggest competitor, approached with a predatory smile that made Nathaniel's instincts flare. "Nathaniel, congratulations on the award. Well deserved." Marcus's attention shifted to Angela, his gaze lingering inappropriately. "And who is this stunning creature? I don't believe we've been introduced." "Angela Miller," she said smoothly, extending her hand with professional courtesy. "I'm Nathaniel's assistant and girlfriend." "Assistant and girlfriend? How delightfully modern." Marcus's tone dripped with condescension and implication. "You must be very talented to manage both roles so effectively." The insult was subtle but unmistakable, suggesting Angela had traded sexual favors for professional position. Nathaniel felt rage surge through him, hot and immediate, protective instincts he didn't know he possessed roaring to life. "That's enough, Drake." "Oh, relax, Stephen. I'm simply admiring your excellent taste. Though I do wonder." "Wonder about what?" Nathaniel stepped closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous register that made even Drake hesitate. "Wonder whether a woman as brilliant and accomplished as Angela would choose to be with me? Wonder if her MBA from Northwestern and her flawless performance record could possibly be legitimate? Or are you wondering why a woman this extraordinary would waste even a moment of her time dealing with small-minded men who can't conceive of professional excellence and personal connection coexisting?" The area around them had gone quiet, people sensing confrontation. Angela's hand touched Nathaniel's arm, her voice low. Nathaniel, it's fine. It's not fine. He kept his eyes locked on Drake. You will apologize to Miss Miller, and then you will leave. If I ever hear you speak to her, or any woman with such disrespect again, I will make it my personal mission to ensure your company's technology becomes obsolete. Do we understand each other? Drake's face flushed with anger and embarrassment, but he managed a stiff nod. My apologies, Miss Miller. I spoke out of turn. He retreated quickly, and the crowd dispersed, conversations resuming with heightened interest in the drama they'd witnessed. Nathaniel turned to Angela, still shaking with protective fury. Are you all right? I'm fine. I've handled worse. But her eyes were soft as she looked at him, seeing something that made her breath catch. You defended me. Of course I did. What he implied was, no, I mean you defended me. Not your reputation, not the company image, but me, as a person you value. Her hand was still on his arm, warm even through his jacket. That wasn't part of our arrangement. Nathaniel stared at her, realizing with crystalline clarity that somewhere along the way, their fake relationship had become devastatingly real for him. He'd stopped performing affection and started feeling it. He'd stopped tolerating her presence and started craving it. He'd stopped seeing his mother's betrayal when he looked at Angela and started seeing the future he'd convinced himself he didn't want. Angela, he didn't know how to finish that sentence, how to articulate something he barely understood himself. She smiled, gentle and knowing. Come on, let's get some air. They stepped onto the terrace overlooking the city, Chicago's lights sprawling beneath them in glittering patterns. The night air was cool, carrying the promise of autumn, and Nathaniel felt like he was standing on the edge of something vast and terrifying. I need to tell you something, Angela said quietly. This arrangement, this fake relationship, it stopped being fake for me somewhere along the way. I don't know exactly when. Maybe that night at the gala when you told me about your mother, or maybe the morning you let me see you vulnerable with that hangover, or possibly it was always heading this direction from the first moment I refused to be intimidated by you. She turned to face him fully. I care about you, Nathaniel. The real you, not the public persona or the cold billionaire facade. I care about the man who works himself to exhaustion, who hides pain behind anger, who's capable of such brilliance and tenderness but terrified to show it. And I think maybe you care about me too. Nathaniel's heart hammered against his ribs. Every instinct screamed at him to retreat, to rebuild his walls, to protect himself before she inevitably left like everyone else had. But another part of him, the part Angela had been slowly awakening, wanted desperately to be brave enough to try. I do, he admitted, the words feeling like stepping off a cliff. Care about you. More than I should, more than I wanted to, more than I know how to handle. You've disrupted everything I thought I knew about myself, about trust, about what's possible. And it terrifies me because everyone I've ever trusted has left, and if you left, his voice broke slightly. I don't think I'd recover. Then don't give me a reason to leave. Angela stepped closer, close enough that he could see gold flecks in her brown eyes. Let me in, Nathaniel. Really in. Stop fighting what's happening between us, and just let yourself feel it. What if I hurt you? What if I'm too damaged, too cold too? You're not damaged. You're human. And humans heal. They grow. They learn to trust again when someone proves they're worthy of it. Her hand cupped his cheek, the gentleness of the gesture making his eyes burn. I'm not your mother. I'm not going to abandon you. I'm choosing you, Nathaniel Stephen, with full knowledge of your flaws and fears and sharp edges. I'm choosing you anyway. He kissed her then, unable to resist any longer, unable to maintain the pretense that this was anything but completely, terrifyingly real. Angela melted into him, her arms wrapping around his neck, and for the first time in 28 years, Nathaniel allowed himself to feel without armor, to want without shame, to hope without cynicism. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. I don't know how to do this. How to be in a relationship, how to trust, how to be the kind of man you deserve. Then we'll figure it out together. Angela smiled, and it was radiant. That's what relationships are, two imperfect people choosing each other and learning as they go. What do we tell Marcus and the PR team? The truth. That somewhere between the fake dates and stage photographs, we accidentally fell in love for real. She laughed softly. I suspect they'll be thrilled. It's the perfect ending to their narrative. And if it doesn't work? If I fail you, or you realize I'm not worth the effort, stop borrowing trouble from tomorrow, Nathaniel. Be here with me now. That's all I'm asking. She kissed him again, soft and sweet. Just be here. So he was. For the first time and longer than he could remember, Nathaniel Stephen stopped planning, stopped protecting, stopped living in the fortress of his fears. He stayed on that terrace with Angela in his arms and let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, trust wasn't foolishness. Maybe it was the bravest thing he'd ever done. The next morning, Nathaniel woke to sunlight streaming through his penthouse windows and the scent of coffee brewing in his kitchen. For a disoriented moment, he wondered if last night had been a dream. The confession, the kiss, the complete surrender of his carefully guarded heart. Then Angela appeared in his bedroom doorway, wearing one of his dress shirts and carrying 2 mugs of coffee, and he knew it was beautifully, terrifyingly real. Good morning, she said, handing him a mug with a shy smile that made his chest tight. I hope you don't mind I raided your kitchen. Your coffee selection is impressive. Stay, he said impulsively. Move in with me. I know it's fast, probably too fast, but I don't want to waste time pretending to be cautious when we've already crossed every line that mattered. Stay. Angela's smile widened, luminous with joy. Ask me again after you've experienced my terrible singing in the shower and my tendency to leave books on every available surface. You might change your mind. I won't. Then yes, I'll stay. They told Marcus that afternoon, and his whoop of delight could probably be heard 3 floors down. This is perfect. The fake relationship becoming real. The media will eat it up. We should. No. Nathaniel interrupted firmly. No more press releases, no more staged photographs, no more performance. What Angela and I have is real, and it's private. The public can draw whatever conclusions they want from seeing us together, but we're not packaging our relationship for consumption anymore. Marcus looked disappointed, but nodded with respect. Fair enough. Though for what it's worth, I think you two are good for each other. I've never seen you this, human. Nathaniel. That seems to be the consensus. The following months unfolded with a happiness Nathaniel hadn't known was possible. Angela moved into his penthouse, transforming his sterile, minimalist space into a home with her warm presence and scattered books and the sound of her laughter. They worked together during the day, partners in every sense, and Angela's influence on both Nathaniel and the company was undeniable. She pushed him to implement better workplace policies, to value employee well-being alongside profit margins, to recognize that a successful company required more than just financial returns. Under her gentle but persistent influence, Nathaniel established mentorship programs for young professionals, particularly women of color entering the tech industry. He increased parental leave benefits, created flexible work arrangements, and even, though he'd never have believed it 6 months earlier, learned to occasionally say please and thank you to his staff. The board noticed. Shareholders noticed. Employees definitely noticed. Nathaniel Stephen was changing, softening around the edges while maintaining his brilliant strategic mind, and everyone agreed Angela Miller was the reason why. But transformation isn't linear, and healing old wounds takes more than love and good intentions. The crisis came 8 months into their relationship, when a woman appeared in the Stephen Technologies lobby requesting to see Nathaniel. Security called up to verify, and Angela, who was handling his schedule while his new assistant was at lunch, took the call. There's a woman here named Diane Harrington. She says she's Mr. Stephen's mother and she needs to speak with him urgently. Angela's blood went cold. Diane Harrington, Nathaniel's mother, who'd abandoned him nearly 3 decades ago and never looked back. She glanced through Nathaniel's glass office door, seeing him absorbed in a conference call, unaware of the ghost that had just walked back into his life. I'll be right down, Angela said, making a split-second decision to handle this herself first. Diane Harrington was a beautiful woman in her late 50s, elegant and poised in an expensive suit. Angela could see traces of the woman Nathaniel had described, but time and experience had added lines of worry around her eyes and mouth. Miss Miller. Diane stood as Angela approached. I remember your face from the news coverage. You're Nathaniel's girlfriend, aren't you? I am. And you're the woman who abandoned him when he was 7 years old and never contacted him again. Angela's voice was calm but firm. Why are you here, Miss Harrington. I need to speak with my son. It's important. Everything is important to the person asking. What specifically do you want? Diane's composure cracked slightly. I'm dying. Stage 4 cancer. Maybe 6 months left if I'm lucky. And before I go, I need to apologize to Nathaniel for what I did, explain why I left, make whatever peace is possible. Please, I'm not here for money or to cause trouble. I just need to see my son one more time. Angela studied her, seeing genuine regret and fear in the older woman's eyes. She thought about Nathaniel upstairs, about the walls he'd finally started lowering, about how this confrontation could either help him heal completely or destroy all the progress he'd made. Wait here, she said finally. I'll talk to him. But if he refuses to see you, you will respect that decision and leave. Do we have an understanding? Yes. Thank you. Angela rode the elevator back up, her mind racing through possible approaches. Nathaniel was off his call when she entered his office, reviewing documents with that intense focus she'd learned meant he was stressed about something. Nathaniel, I need to tell you something, and I need you to stay calm. He looked up immediately, reading her tension. What's wrong? Your mother is downstairs in the lobby. She says she's dying and wants to see you, to apologize and explain. Angela moved closer, taking his hand before he could retreat into anger. I told her you might refuse, and that's absolutely your right. But I also think, and you can tell me I'm overstepping, I think maybe you need to hear what she has to say. Not for her sake, but for yours. Nathaniel's face had gone pale, his hand rigid in hers. No. Tell security to remove her. I don't want to see her. I don't want her explanations. I don't. Breathe, Angela said gently. Just breathe for a moment and think. What would you regret more? Seeing her and potentially getting closure, or refusing to see her and always wondering what she might have said? What would help you heal, Nathaniel? Not what feels safest, but what would actually help. He pulled away from her, pacing to the windows with agitation radiating from every line of his body. She left me. She abandoned her child and never looked back, and now she shows up because she's dying and wants absolution? Why should I give her that comfort? You shouldn't. Not for her. Angela approached carefully, as though he were a wounded animal that might bolt. But maybe for yourself. Maybe to finally understand why she left, to hear that it wasn't your fault, to close a chapter that's been bleeding into every relationship you've tried to have since, including ours. You're saying I need to forgive her? His voice was bitter. I'm saying you need to face her. Forgiveness is optional. Understanding might not be. They stood in tense silence, Nathaniel's internal battle playing out across his features. Finally, he nodded once, sharply. Fine. Bring her up. But you stay with me. I can't. I need you there. Of course. Whatever you need. Angela collected Diane from the lobby, escorting her to a small conference room rather than Nathaniel's office. This needed neutral territory, space that didn't belong to either of them. Nathaniel was already there when they arrived, standing rigid by the window, refusing to look at the woman who'd given birth to him. Nathaniel, Diane breathed, and her voice carried such longing and regret that even Angela felt it. You've grown into such a remarkable man. Your father would be so proud. Don't. Nathaniel's voice was ice. Don't talk about him like you cared, like you didn't destroy him when you left. He died 5 years ago, still carrying the pain you caused. So don't pretend you have the right to invoke his memory. Diane flinched, but nodded. You're right. I don't have that right. I don't have any rights where you're concerned, Nathaniel. I gave those up the day I walked out. She sat down heavily, looking suddenly fragile. But I'm dying, and I can't go without trying to explain, even knowing you probably won't forgive me. Then explain. He finally turned to face her, and Angela's heart broke at the mixture of pain and need in his expression. Explain how you could leave your 7-year-old son. Explain how you could promise to call, and then vanish completely. Explain what was so wrong with us that you had to escape. Nothing was wrong with you. You were perfect, Nathaniel. Brilliant and sweet, and everything a mother could want. Diane's eyes welled with tears. I was the problem. I was 22 when I married your father, 23 when you were born, and I wasn't ready for any of it. I loved you both, but I felt trapped, suffocated by expectations I couldn't meet. Your father was a good man but older, traditional, wanting a wife who would be content with home and family when I wanted to discover who I was beyond those roles. So you left. You chose yourself over your child. I did. And it was selfish and wrong, and I've regretted it every day since. Diane wiped at her tears. I thought you'd be better off without a mother who resented her life, who felt trapped, who wasn't the maternal figure you deserved. I convinced myself that a clean break was kinder than staying and poisoning your childhood with my unhappiness. I was wrong. I was so wrong, Nathaniel. Did you ever think about me? Did you ever wonder how I was, what I was doing, whether I needed my mother? Every single day, I followed your accomplishments through news articles and business coverage. I watched you build an empire and become brilliant and successful, and I told myself you were better off without me. Diane stood, taking a tentative step closer. But seeing you now, seeing the coldness you've developed, the walls you've built, I can see the damage I caused. And I'm so sorry, Nathaniel. I can't undo it. I can't give you back your childhood or your father or the years we lost. But I can tell you that leaving you was the worst mistake of my life, that you were never inadequate or unlovable, and that none of this was your fault. Nathaniel's facade cracked, decades of pain finally finding release. I blame myself. For years, I thought if I'd been better, smarter, more lovable, you would have stayed. I convinced myself that love was a lie, that trust was foolishness, that everyone eventually leaves. I built my entire life around that belief. I know, and I'm sorry I taught you that lesson. Diane looked at Angela with gratitude. But it seems you found someone strong enough to prove me wrong. Someone who didn't leave even when you probably gave her every reason to. Hold on to her, Nathaniel. Don't let my mistakes cost you the love you deserve. Angela moved to Nathaniel's side, taking his hand and feeling him grip hers like a lifeline. They stood together, presenting a united front, and Diane smiled sadly. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I hope someday you can understand that I was young and scared and broken in my own ways, and that my failures as a mother say nothing about your worth as a son. You were always worthy of love, Nathaniel. You still are. The meeting ended shortly after, Diane leaving her contact information in case Nathaniel ever wanted to reach out during her remaining months. He made no promises, offered no absolution, but Angela could see something had shifted in him. Not forgiveness, perhaps, but the beginning of understanding. They went home early that day, Nathaniel silent and processing. That evening, he finally broke down completely, sobbing in Angela's arms as decades of repressed grief and pain finally found release. She held him through it all, whispering reassurances and love, proving with her steadfast presence that not everyone leaves, that some people stay even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. I don't know how to forgive her, he admitted when the storm passed, his voice hoarse. I don't know if I can. You don't have to. Not now, maybe not ever. Forgiveness isn't mandatory, Nathaniel. But understanding might help you heal. Angela brushed his hair back gently. You were just a child who needed his mother, and she failed you. That wasn't your fault. It was never your fault. I know that now. Intellectually, I've always known it. But knowing and believing are different things. They are. But you're working toward believing it, and that's progress. She kissed his forehead. I'm proud of you. Today took courage. I couldn't have done it without you. Yes, you could have. But I'm glad you didn't have to. That night, lying in bed with Angela curled against him, Nathaniel felt something he hadn't experienced since childhood. Peace. The confrontation with his mother hadn't erased his pain, but it had created space for healing. Understanding her motivations didn't excuse her actions, but it released him from the burden of thinking he'd been unlovable. He wasn't unlovable. He was just human, imperfect and wounded, and doing his best to heal. And he had Angela, brilliant and stubborn and impossibly kind, choosing him every single day. That was enough. More than enough. It was everything. The final transformation came 2 weeks later, when Nathaniel stood before a press conference to announce the Diana Harrington Foundation for Women in Technology, named after his mother not as forgiveness, but as acknowledgement. The foundation would provide scholarships, mentorship, and support for women of color entering STEM fields, particularly those from difficult backgrounds who needed second chances and renewed opportunities. Angela stood beside him as he made the announcement, and if anyone noticed Diane Harrington watching from the back of the room with tears streaming down her face, they were kind enough not to comment. For too long, Nathaniel told the gathered press, I've let past pain dictate my present actions and future possibilities. I've been cold when I should have been warm, rigid when I should have been flexible, closed when I should have been open. But someone incredible taught me that healing is possible, that trust isn't foolishness, and that love, real, honest, vulnerable love, is worth every risk. He took Angela's hand, looking at her with everything he felt shining in his eyes. I'm not perfect. I'm still learning how to be the partner and leader people deserve. But I'm trying. And that's because Angela Miller refused to give up on me even when I'd given up on myself. This foundation is my attempt to extend that same grace to others, to create opportunities for women who might otherwise be overlooked, to prove that past mistakes don't determine future worth. The press conference ended to thunderous applause. Articles would be written about Nathaniel Stephen's remarkable transformation, from Chicago's coldest billionaire to a philanthropist committed to equity and inclusion. His public image would be rehabilitated completely, his relationship with Angela held up as proof that people can change when properly motivated. But the real story was quieter, more personal. It was in the way Nathaniel now said thank you to his staff, the way he asked Angela's opinion and actually listened, the way he'd learned to apologize when he was wrong. It was in therapy sessions where he worked to understand his trauma instead of being controlled by it. It was in his tentative, careful meetings with his mother during her final months, not forgiving but no longer actively hating. It was in the morning Angela found him looking at engagement rings online, trying to figure out which style she'd prefer. That one, she said, making him jump. She pointed to a simple but elegant solitaire. If you're going to propose, I prefer classic designs. I haven't decided to propose, he protested weakly. Nathaniel Stephen, you're researching engagement rings at 6 in the morning while drinking coffee I made you in the home we share. You've decided. She kissed his cheek. And yes, I haven't asked yet. I'm answering preemptively. Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I'll spend my life with you. Yes, I'll keep pushing you to be better while loving exactly who you are. Yes to all of it. He pulled her into his lap, holding her close. I was going to do something romantic. Plan a special moment. Find the perfect words. This is perfect. You, me, morning coffee, and honest conversation. This is us, Nathaniel. This is what I'm saying yes to. He kissed her then, pouring everything he felt into it. Gratitude, love, wonder that she'd chosen him despite everything. When they finally pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. I love you, Angela Miller. More than I thought I could love anyone. You saved me. No, she corrected gently. You saved yourself. I just reminded you that you were worth saving. 6 months later, they married in a small, intimate ceremony with friends, family, and, surprising everyone, Diane Harrington in attendance. She would pass away 3 weeks after the wedding, but not before seeing her son find happiness and telling Angela how grateful she was that Nathaniel had found someone who loved him unconditionally. A year after that, Angela became partner at Stephen Technologies, equal to Nathaniel in every way that mattered. Together, they built not just a successful company, but a workplace culture that valued people, supported growth, and proved that compassion and profit could coexist. They fought sometimes, because healing isn't linear and old patterns die hard. But they always came back to each other, always chose understanding over anger, always remembered that love is a verb requiring daily action. Nathaniel never became warm and effusive. That wasn't in his nature. But he learned to show love through actions, supporting Angela's ambitions, championing diverse hiring practices, mentoring young professionals, and slowly, gradually becoming someone who valued people as much as profits. The Ice King had melted, not into water but into something stronger and more enduring. He'd become human, complete with flaws and fears and the capacity for genuine connection. And it all started with one stubborn, brilliant woman who refused to accept that cold was his only option, who insisted he could be better, and who loved him enough to wait while he figured out how. So there you have it, a story about how hate transforms into love, how prejudice crumbles under genuine connection, and how one person's faith can help another person heal. Nathaniel and Angela's journey proves that no one is too broken to change, no wound too deep to heal, and no heart too frozen to thaw when the right person comes along. If this story touched your heart, if you found yourself rooting for Nathaniel and Angela, if you believe in second chances and the transformative power of love, then please hit that like button right now. Drop a comment below telling me what moment resonated most with you. Was it when Nathaniel first defended Angela at the gala? When he finally broke down and let himself grieve? Or maybe when Angela said yes to his unspoken proposal over morning coffee? I want to hear from you. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel because we have more incredible stories coming your way. Stories about love, redemption, growth, and the beautiful complexity of human connection. Don't miss out on the next journey we'll take together. But the story of Nathaniel and Angela didn't end with their wedding or Angela's partnership. Life continued, as it always does, with new challenges and opportunities for growth. 2 years into their marriage, Angela discovered she was pregnant. The news sent Nathaniel into a quiet panic that lasted for 3 days before he finally articulated his fear. What if I'm like my mother? What if I can't do this, can't be what a child needs, can't love properly because I never learned how? Angela had taken his face in her hands, looking at him with absolute certainty. You're not your mother, Nathaniel. You're a man who's done the hard work of healing, who's learned to love and trust and be vulnerable. You're going to be an amazing father because you know exactly what children need: presence, consistency, unconditional love, and you're capable of giving all of that. I've watched you learn how. I'll be right beside you the entire way. Their daughter, Nathaniel Stephen, was born on a snowy December morning, and Nathaniel wept when he held her for the first time. All his fears dissolved in the face of this tiny, perfect human who looked at him with complete trust. He made a vow in that hospital room. She would never doubt her worth, never question whether she was loved, never carry the wounds he'd carried. Angela watched him with their daughter over the following months and years, seeing how gentle he was, how attentive, how he'd transformed all his painful lessons into fierce protection and unconditional love for Maya. He took paternity leave, something the old Nathaniel would never have considered, and spent those weeks learning to change diapers, soothe colic, and function on minimal sleep with patients he'd once thought impossible. The Stephen Technologies board had been skeptical about both parents taking extended leave, but Nathaniel had been firm. My daughter will know her parents were present for her from the beginning. The company will survive. Family comes first. It was a radical statement from a man who'd once made the company his entire identity, and it set a new standard for work-life balance throughout the organization. When Maya was 18 months old, Angela returned to work part-time, and they navigated the challenges of dual-career parenting with the same teamwork they brought to business. They hired help, but remained hands-on parents, both determined that their daughter would grow up knowing she was their priority. Nathaniel's relationship with his mother's memory evolved during this time. He never fully forgave Diane for abandoning him, but he came to understand her in ways he couldn't before becoming a parent himself. He understood fear, inadequacy, the terrifying weight of another person's complete dependence. He understood how someone could make terrible choices while still loving their child. Understanding didn't erase the pain, but it created space for peace. The Diana Harrington Foundation flourished, supporting hundreds of women in pursuing technology careers. Many of them were mothers returning to the workforce, women who'd taken breaks for family and needed support re-establishing themselves professionally. Angela spearheaded that initiative, drawing on her own experiences and ensuring the foundation addressed real barriers women faced. 3 years after Maya's birth, Nathaniel found himself in his office late one evening, reviewing applications for the foundation's newest scholarship program. One application stopped him cold. A single mother from the South Side, brilliant test scores, compelling essay about using technology to improve educational access in underserved communities. She reminded him so much of Angela. That same determination, that same refusal to let circumstances limit potential. He approved her application immediately, then sat back in his chair, reflecting on how far he'd traveled from the man who'd once let prejudice blind him to people's worth. His phone buzzed with a text from Angela. Maya's asking for you. Says Daddy needs to come home and read bedtime stories. Your daughter has your imperious tone already. It's adorable and terrifying. Nathaniel smiled, something he did regularly now, and packed up his briefcase. 5 years ago, he would have stayed at the office until midnight, prioritizing work over everything. Now, he knew exactly where he belonged. He arrived home to find Maya in her pajamas, holding a stack of books nearly as tall as she was. Daddy, you're home. I picked all the stories. Mama said that's too many, but I said Daddy can read lots because he's very smart. I am very smart, Nathaniel agreed solemnly, scooping her up. But even very smart daddies need to sleep sometimes. How about we read 3 stories tonight and save the rest for tomorrow? 4 stories. 3.5. We'll stop in the middle of the 4th one, and I'll finish it tomorrow. Maya considered this negotiation with the seriousness of a business executive, definitely his daughter, then nodded. Okay, deal. Angela watched this exchange from the doorway, her expression soft with love. She's learning negotiation tactics from you. By age 5, she'll be running the company. Good. She'll be better at it than I am. Nathaniel carried Maya toward her bedroom, then paused to kiss Angela. Thank you. For what? For not giving up on me. For believing I could be more than my worst instincts. For giving me this life when I thought I didn't deserve one. His voice was quiet, sincere. For loving me when I was unlovable. You were never unlovable, Nathaniel. Just hurt. Angela touched his cheek gently. And for the record, you thank me for this regularly. And I'm going to keep telling you the same thing. I didn't save you. We saved each other. That's what love does. It makes both people better, stronger, more capable of becoming who they're meant to be. Later that night, after Maya was asleep and they'd settled into their own bedroom, Nathaniel pulled Angela close. I've been thinking about expanding the foundation, creating programs specifically for children from broken homes, kids who might be carrying the same wounds I carried. Early intervention, therapy, mentorship, helping them before the damage becomes permanent. That's a beautiful idea. It's selfish, really. I'm trying to save my 7-year-old self by saving others. He was quiet for a moment. I think about that little boy sometimes, the one who watched his mother leave and decided love was dangerous. I wish I could go back and tell him that he'd survive, that he'd heal, that he'd find someone extraordinary who'd teach him how to be whole again. You can't go back, Angela said softly. But you can help other children going through similar pain. You can use everything you learn to make their journey easier. That's not selfish, Nathaniel. That's heroic. I don't feel heroic. I feel grateful. Grateful that you walked into my office that day and refused to be intimidated. Grateful that you were stubborn enough to see past my defenses. Grateful that you loved me before I knew how to love myself. Well, I'm grateful you eventually stopped trying to fire me. He laughed, the sound genuine and warm. Best decision I never made. Though you have to admit, you were incredibly irritating at first. I was competent and you hated it. I hated how right you always were. Still do, actually. Good thing you love me anyway. The best thing, he corrected, pulling her closer. Loving you is the best thing I've ever done. 5 years later, Maya started kindergarten, and Nathaniel surprised everyone by volunteering as a classroom reading helper once a week. The sight of Chicago's most formidable billionaire sitting cross-legged on a classroom floor, surrounded by 5-year-olds, reading stories with genuine enthusiasm became one of Angela's favorite images. Who are you, and what have you done with my husband? She teased after his first session. I'm practicing being the father I needed when I was young. These kids deserve adults who show up, who care, who make them feel valued. He showed her a drawing one of Maya's classmates had made, a stick figure labeled Mr. Nathaniel, with a huge smile. Besides, children are brutally honest. They'll tell you immediately if you're being inauthentic. It's refreshing after boardrooms full of people who tell me what they think I want to hear. The foundation continued growing, becoming one of the most respected organizations in its field. Angela took on increasing leadership responsibilities, and eventually, she and Nathaniel became true partners in every sense. Running the company together, raising their daughter together, supporting each other's dreams and ambitions with equal investment. They had a second child, a son named Marcus after the PR director whose fake relationship scheme had accidentally brought them together. Marcus Wellington attended the christening with tears in his eyes, touched beyond words that his ridiculous plan had resulted in genuine love and now a child bearing his name. I always knew you two were perfect for each other, he insisted, conveniently forgetting how skeptical he'd been initially. You thought we'd kill each other within a month, Angela reminded him. I thought you might kill him within a month. I always believed in your restraint and professionalism. The years passed with the beautiful mundanity of a life well lived. There were challenges, economic downturns that tested the company, Parenting struggles as Maya and Marcus grew into opinionated children with strong wills inherited from both parents. Moments when old wounds resurfaced and required attention. But Nathaniel and Angela faced everything together, their partnership growing stronger with each obstacle overcome. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Nathaniel took Angela back to the terrace where he'd first kissed her, where their fake relationship had become devastatingly real. 10 years, he said, looking out over Chicago's glittering skyline. 10 years since you changed my life completely. We changed each other's lives, Angela corrected, as she always did. I was just as transformed by loving you as you were by loving me. How so? You were already perfect. She laughed. I was determined and competent and maybe a little rigid in my certainty that I could handle anything. You taught me vulnerability, that it's okay to need someone, that strength isn't about doing everything alone. You taught me that love isn't weakness. It's the greatest courage there is. Nathaniel pulled her into his arms, marveling as he always did that she was real, that she'd chosen him, that this life they'd built together wasn't a dream he'd wake from. I was so certain I knew how the world worked. Trust was foolish, love was temporary, isolation was safety. You proved me wrong about everything. Not wrong, just incomplete. Angela smiled up at him. You knew how to protect yourself, but you hadn't learned yet how to live. I'm glad I got to be part of that education. Part of it. Angela, you were the entire curriculum. He kissed her forehead, then her cheeks, then her lips. Every good thing in my life traces back to you. Our children, our partnership, my relationship with my work, my ability to connect with people. All of it started with you refusing to accept the cold, damaged version of me as final. You insisted I could be more, and then you waited patiently while I figured out how. It wasn't always patient. I yelled at you several times. You advocated for yourself. There's a difference. He grew serious, holding her gaze. I need you to know something, Angela. In my darkest moments, when I'm tempted to retreat into old patterns, when fear whispers that trust is dangerous and love is temporary, I think about you. About your strength, your faith, your unwavering belief that I'm worth loving. That's what pulls me back. Not willpower or determination, but the knowledge that you chose me and keep choosing me every single day. That's the most powerful force in my life. Tears filled Angela's eyes. Nathaniel, let me finish. I've spent 10 years being grateful for you, but I don't know if I've adequately expressed what you mean to me. You're not just my wife or my business partner or the mother of my children, though you're extraordinary at all of those. You're my proof that transformation is possible, that people can heal, that love is worth every risk. You're the answer to every question I had about whether I could be more than my trauma. And the answer is yes, but only because you were brave enough to believe it first. I love you, Angela whispered. I love you so much, and I'm so proud of who you've become, who we've become together. They stood there on that terrace, the city sparkling below them, and Nathaniel felt complete peace. The frightened, wounded 7-year-old boy who'd watched his mother leave was still part of him, would always be part of him. But he'd been joined by the man Angela had helped him become: father, husband, partner, philanthropist, someone who led with both brilliance and compassion. He'd learned that strength wasn't about never feeling pain, but about healing from it. That trust wasn't foolish, but brave. That love wasn't weakness, but the greatest power in the universe. And he'd learned it all because one stubborn, brilliant, beautiful woman had walked into his office and refused to accept his limitations as final. The Ice King had melted completely, leaving in his place a man capable of warmth, connection, and genuine love. The transformation hadn't been easy or quick or without setbacks, but it had been worth every difficult moment, every confronted fear, every time he'd chosen vulnerability over safety. Because on the other side of that transformation was this life. Angela in his arms, children who would never doubt they were loved, meaningful work that helped others, and a deep, abiding knowledge that he was exactly where he belonged. Sometimes, late at night, Nathaniel still thought about his mother. He'd made peace with her before she died, not forgiveness exactly, but understanding and release. He'd visited her grave once, bringing flowers and Maya, telling his daughter about the grandmother she'd never known. Was she nice, Daddy? Maya had asked, with a child's simple need to categorize people as good or bad. She was complicated, Nathaniel had answered honestly. She made mistakes that hurt people, but she also taught me important lessons, even if she taught them in painful ways. And without those lessons, I might not have appreciated your mother when she came into my life. So in a strange way, I'm grateful for all of it. Now, on this anniversary evening, with Angela warm in his arms and their entire future stretching before them, Nathaniel understood something fundamental about the human experience. We're all broken in our own ways, all carrying wounds from our past, all struggling to be better than our worst moments. But we're also capable of extraordinary healing when someone believes in us enough to wait while we figure it out. Angela had been that person for him, and he'd spent 10 years trying to be that person for her in return, supporting her ambitions, celebrating her victories, holding her through struggles, proving daily that her faith in him hadn't been misplaced. "What are you thinking?" Angela asked, reading his contemplative expression. "I'm thinking about a young woman who walked into my office 5 years ago, competent and confident and completely unafraid of the coldest man in Chicago. I'm thinking about how she changed everything simply by refusing to quit. I'm thinking about how grateful I am that she was stubborn enough to see my potential when I couldn't see it myself. I'm thinking about a brilliant, wounded man who learned how to love again," Angela said softly, "who faced his deepest fears and came out stronger, who built a life defined not by past pain but by present joy. I'm thinking about how proud I am of you, of us, of everything we've created together." They kissed then, deep and sweet, and full of 10 years of partnership, devotion, and unwavering commitment. When they pulled apart, both were smiling. "Come on," Angela said, taking his hand. "Let's go home to our children." "Our children," Nathaniel repeated, still marveling at those words. "Our home, our life, all the things I thought I didn't want because I was too afraid to want them. And now I can't imagine wanting anything else." They left the terrace hand in hand, just as they'd faced every challenge and celebrated every victory over the past decade. Together, equal, partners in every sense of the word. Behind them, the city lights glittered like scattered diamonds, beautiful and bright, illuminating the path they'd traveled from hatred to understanding, from fear to trust, from isolation to profound connection. It was a path that had required courage, vulnerability, and the willingness to change. But it was also a path that had led to everything worth having: love, family, purpose, and the deep knowledge that they were better together than they'd ever been apart. The Ice King had melted into a man capable of warmth. The determined assistant had become a partner and equal. And together, they'd built something neither could have created alone: a life full of meaning, connection, and the kind of love that transforms everything it touches. This was their story, from hate to love, from prejudice to understanding, from broken to healed. It wasn't a fairy tale with easy answers or instant transformation. It was something better, a real story about real people doing the hard work of becoming their best selves, supported by someone who believed in their potential even when they couldn't see it themselves. And in the end, that's what love really is, not fireworks and grand gestures, though those have their place, but the daily choice to show up, to try, to be better, to believe in each other through difficulties and celebrate each other through triumphs. Nathaniel and Angela had made that choice 10 years ago on a terrace overlooking Chicago. They'd made it every day since. And they'd keep making it for all the years to come. Because that's what happens when hate transforms into love. It doesn't just change a moment or a feeling. It changes everything. Forever. And that's the most powerful transformation of all. Did this story move you? Did Nathaniel and Angela's journey from enemies to soulmates capture your heart? If you loved watching the Ice King melt and witnessing the power of unconditional love, then smash that like button right now. Your support means everything and helps us bring you more incredible stories like this one. Drop a comment below and tell me, what was your favorite moment in this entire journey? Was it when Angela first stood up to Nathaniel in that board meeting? When he defended her at the gala? The moment he finally broke down and let himself heal? Or maybe their tender anniversary reflection, looking back on 10 years of love. I read every single comment, and I love hearing what resonated with you. And if you're not already subscribed, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our next story. We have more incredible journeys coming your way. Stories about love, redemption, second chances, and the beautiful complexity of human connection. Share this video with someone who needs to believe in second chances, who needs to remember that no one is too broken to heal, who needs hope that love really can transform everything. Because that's what Nathaniel and Angela's story proves. With courage, patience, and unwavering faith in each other, we can overcome any obstacle and build something beautiful from even the most broken beginnings. Thank you so much for being here, for investing your time in this story, and for being part of this incredible community. Until next time, remember, you're never too frozen to thaw, never too broken to heal, and never too lost to find your way home, especially when someone loves you enough to light the path. See you in the next story. Keep believing in love, keep believing in second chances, and keep believing in the transformative power of genuine human connection. Now go ahead and hit that like button, drop that comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. This is just the beginning of many more incredible stories to come.